Welcome to Middle Earth Readings. Today it is the 8th of March 2021. I am Maggie Cunningham. I'm the founder of maginrose.com, which is a website there to provide resources and trainings and support for seers, healers, magicians and mystics working within the Northern European tradition. So welcome to Middle Earth Readings for this week. And as normal, if you're here live, please do let me know what runes are coming up for you in the chat box. Say hello, let me know how you are, where you are, what's going on for you, and we'll see how that intersects with the reading that we've got. Now, we've got some quite weighty topics to get through in this one, so I'm hoping that we'll get through all the material in the time allocated. So I've got a couple of starter questions for you, just for you to ponder as we're going through. Hi Suzanne, you've got Hargalas for the whole week. Interesting. We'll see what that gets us with Bacano, which is very strong this week, Suzanne. There's a bit of divine feminine energy going on, but maybe you've got a bit of change going on. Let's see how we go. I've got some good stuff for you, I think, coming later in the session when we get onto Bacano. So the questions that I've got for you to think about are: where are my edges and who controls them? Just sit with that, just allow that to ponder. We'll be coming back to that later in the reading. So I also wanted to say today, because I've mentioned Bacano already as being an important rune, it's a really key rune coming up for us later in the week. It is International Women's Day today. Happy International Women's Day. And for those of us in the UK, and I know it's elsewhere as well in the world, it is Mother's Day on Sunday, which just so happens to also be the day when we have Suna's chariot entering Bacano, and we have Mani's chariot, the new moon in Bacano as well. Bacano is the rune of the divine feminine. So lots of lovely divine feminine energy coming through for us this week. And even though the transition I'm going to be talking about with Bacano doesn't come until Sunday, I can still feel quite a lot of tingles for it already. Hi Felicity. Felicity's got Isa and North is. Okay, again, I feel like we're going to have to revisit these runes a little bit, but once we get into our talking about the energies that are available to you, I think that might help. And there's a nice combination of ice and fire there, Isa, for you there, Felicity, as well. Quite a creative combination, but maybe a bit uncomfortable is what I'm feeling. So there's potential there, I think, but it feels a sort of like a crackly, slightly spiky energy for you there, Felicity. So I think that's probably something to watch out for. Just be a little bit kind to yourself through the coming week. So we've got I wanted to start with this week. So we've got two moments. So we've got Wednesday, we've got a transition, and then Sunday we've got a transition. But for me, this whole week is part of a bigger picture piece. So you'll remember that at the winter solstice we had the conjunction of Thor's chariot and Loki's chariot, so Jupiter and Saturn, and that signified as a big like tidal current of energy that came, and then it sort of slowly swept back again. And to me, this is another tidal current of energy, and it's maybe not as boom, like in your face as the conjunction was, but it's a slow and steady build, and it's come from Ud's chariot in Largus, which moved yesterday, and I really felt it. Really felt that change. I mean, it was coming, but it really had a shift for me. I had lots of, just really positive stuff coming through today. Now, Ud's chariot moves slowly, so it's going to now be in Largus for the rest of the year. That's where it is. Last year, it was in Largus, and then it went retrograde. It moved out of Largus back into Manas, back out again. It was all a bit uncomfortable. It was a big laser focus on humanity. What are you doing, humanity? Was sort of what Ud, the Norn of the past, the Norn of that which was saying. So there's a lot of karmic stuff happening. And with Manas and Largus in that year, they combined with Perthro, and it was really a sense of karmic debris coming up to the surface and rising up. You've got to deal with the consequences of your actions, humanity. That's basically what's coming through. Now this time it feels to me as if we've had that first wave, and now the Lagu's energy is bringing another part of its power to us, which is the power of regeneration, of plant life, growth coming forward, purification. Almost like this second wave is a much clearer, cleaner, fertile energy than the first one. So I'm feeling really good about this, and we're like, yeah, this is good. And so the planets that are moving on from that are going to build that and combine with that energy as that tide sort of builds and carries on for us. So our second movement is Odin's chariot, and Odin moves into Suelo on Wednesday. And again, he's almost done a little bit of a mini version of what I just described for Ur's chariot. So he was in Suelo in January, and then he went retrograde and went back into Algiers, and now he's come forward again, and he's going, woohoo! He's happy. He's happy to have completed this retrograde time. He does not enjoy retracing his steps. And now he's in Suelo, the rune of the sun, and I'm feeling this really, maybe this is where the tingling is starting to come from, sort of tingly energy of anticipation, of ideas coming through. It's combining with that Lagu's energy to bring lots of new ideas sparking. Suzanne says, I pulled my whole wardrobe out yesterday for a big clear out. Very Hagalaz, very Lagu's as well, with your purifying and moving on forward, Suzanne. So yeah, I can feel that sense that, we want newness. Spring cleaning is in the air anyway, isn't it? For those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, we have spring. Spring is springing. And we'll be coming on to that a little bit more. But Odin is definitely feeling that. You can imagine, the sun, as in like that sparkling, fresh spring sun, and lots of new ideas are coming through. And the advice I would give you for that is, if you have a lot of new ideas flowing, a lot of thoughts, I could do this, and I could do this, and I could do this, is to write them down. Because I think partially because of this, the thrill of being past that retrograde motion, Odin, he's not always the best manifester, let's say. He's a good delegator. Don't get me wrong, he can manifest, but he does it through delegation. Doesn't necessarily do it for like going out and doing this stuff himself, unless it appeals to him. He's in his sovereignty very much there. If it appeals to me, I'll do it. If it's not, I'll get somebody else to do it. Let's ask Loki or Thor or Suna herself. So, he's in Suelo, and the rune of the sun. And, a lot of you will know that that Suna herself, Odin set her the task, her and Mani, the god of the moon's chariot, the task of marking the cycles of time for humans. That's what was said. I think it was probably for other beings as well, but in the Eddas we're told humans. So he's good at delegation. He has a vision and then he delegates, and that's what he does. So write down, doodle, mind map, journal, whatever you need to do to get those ideas down onto paper, so that then when we moved on to slightly different energy, when you may be more able to harness the Lagu's energy, and when we move into the Bacano energy as well, and more manifesting energy, you'll be able to use that as well. So Sally Ann, you're saying Keenaz chose to come to me on Friday after live training, although it was in half space. Yes, so I'm good to stay with this rune as it feels very powerful. Yeah, and Keenaz complements really nicely with Lagu's, the fire and the water. Lovely combination there, and with Suelo, so the ideas coming through as well. So again, for you, Sally Ann, I think that's a lot of it would be about recording those ideas as they come through. So we've got that sense of, of potential, power, ideas coming through, and the Lagu's background, that undercurrent energy. You remember, those of you who joined me last week, talk about the deeper currents, and then the more melody currents. So Odin's chariot's one of the melodies. And then I mentioned I mentioned Mother's Day, I mentioned International Women's Day. So on Sunday, at the end of this week, we've got a big double whammy with Suna's chariot in Bacano and Mani's chariot, the new moon, in Bacano as well. And that's actually quite rare in terms of the chances of that happening. It's reasonably rare for that to happen. So it's very special, it's very powerful energy. And you might look into that and you might think to yourself, this is the divine feminine. Now let's celebrate the divine feminine. By all means do, say thanks. Say thank you to your mother, or whoever it is that's cared for you. If you are a mum, demand your rights. You know, and again, with International Women's Day, there's certainly, you know, a celebration of the feminine is available to us through this week. But what came to me was a little bit, well, it's an alternative part of the Bacano rune, which is what I wanted to share with you today, which is why I asked the question, where are my edges and who controls them? So I'd like you to think about a seed that's been in the ground. You know, it's been in the ground, and the little plant, it's taken its nourishment from the seed and it's pushed through the shell, and it's feeling its edges, you know, and it's feeling this, I'm not a seed anymore, I'm a plant, you know, it's quite a big shift. So it's feeling its own edges of its own being, and it's still beneath ground, so it's feeling upwards, up through the earth. You know, what is this? You know, I'm in darkness, but there's warmth and maybe light above, and the roots are going down, drawing in the earth, you know, that Laguz energy that we've talked about, you know, drawing in the sustenance of the water, minerals, all the things that the plant needs. So the plant's edges are changing rapidly. You know, its physical edges and its sense of itself, they're changing rapidly. And then it comes up into the sunlight, and we have that Odin moment of, oh, there's excitement, we're out, and it's growing even faster then as it draws in the light. And it starts to get another sense of its own edges, you know, of, you know, the other plants around it. Oh, there's other plants like me or different to me, of, you know, danger as well. A lot of them don't make it, let's be honest, you know, it gets eaten, you know, transformed again, or it does, and it gets stronger and stronger. And then, you know, if it forms into a tree, its edges are changing as the bark expands outwards. It becomes more solid and more firm, and it's slow. Its transformation is slower, but its edges are changing all of the time. And you might think, where's she going with this? And it's in order to explain what it is that I wanted to bring to you today, I need to explain one of the concepts of Northern Tradition soul law. So one of the parts of the Northern Tradition soul. Some of you will know this already. And it's the part called the Hyde, and that is spelt Hyde, and sometimes it's actually called the hammer as well. So the Hyde is, I believe, the Anglo-Saxon, and the hammer is the Old Norse. I'm fairly certain that's true. You can look it up and check if you want to, but I think that's the way around that they go. I tend to work with the Hyde, and for me it's because in modern English, obviously I speak English, there are two words that stem from that original concept of the Hyde. One is the idea of hiding, like literally of hiding, and you know, hide and seek. And the other is the hide as in I think like an animal hide. It relates to, you know, the skin or the form. So if you think about hiding, you're hiding your shape, you're hiding your edges, you know. And with the physical form of the hide is the skin, it's your physical edges. And Bacano, the rune Bacano, is very much one of the concepts that's very associated with it is the hide. So, you know, there's a whole extra dimension of Bacano which I think is sometimes lost, and that's what I really wanted to present you to. And the hide, as it's been explained to me, is really fascinating. So I'm going to try and explain it in a few different ways, and let's try to get it right. So for some people, they think about it as being like the astral body. So the hide isn't our physical body. That's actually called the like, or the leek, I think some people call it, which for the word likeness comes from the like, you know, just to confuse us. But the like is the physical body. The hide is the, well, that's what I'm trying to explain. So some people see it as the astral body. Some people see it as being like the aura. Now for me it's slightly different, because the hide to me is something that you can manipulate. So if you imagine when you do a meditation, I'm sure loads of you have done meditations where you imagine your roots going down into the earth. Now I imagine my roots going down into the earth, and when I do that, I'm manipulating my hide. I'm manipulating my energy body so that part of it extends down into the earth and is actually drawing that energy up, you know? And so we're able to work consciously with the hide in that sense. If somebody goes to, let's think about two candidates in a job interview, and imagine that they are dressed identically. They're both smart, they've got, you know, little briefcases, and they're looking fantastic. Right? One of them goes in and they are oozing confidence. They are just oozing vitality. And a lot of that, you can read through micro gestures, micro expressions in the face, tone of voice, how your body is going, or that the palms aren't sweaty, everything. They own the room. But a lot of it is also energetic, and it's done because they are projecting confidence and power through the hide. Whereas another candidate comes along and they do not feel that sense of confidence, and they are literally, you imagine, oh, I want to just shrink up, and get as small as I possibly can. And literally, that's what your hide is doing. It's getting smaller, in that moment. The other thing to note with that, in terms of thinking about edges and boundaries and who controls them, is that the person who's using that confidence is feeling in control of the room. I'm here to present myself and to assess whether, these people are going to offer me a job that I want. The person who is shrinking down is going, they're assessing me. They're in control of this moment. They are judging me. I feel small. I feel weak. I feel vulnerable. And they're giving their power to the people in the room. And you all know, I think it's very common knowledge that a lot of decisions are made about, who to hire in those first few seconds when they enter the room. So the power of the hide is it's very powerful indeed. So confidence and persuasion all come through the hide and our ability to feel powerful within the hide or not. The other thing that really fascinated me, and I was like, and it made so much sense to me about thinking about the hide and thinking about who's in control of it, was when, and I'm sorry, I don't remember which teacher it was that shared this with me, said that the hide is not just it's made up of all of the memories that you have about yourself and your feelings about yourself and how you think about yourself. So that's how it's created and how it's shaped over time. It's continually being influenced by our conscious mind, the roots are going down into the earth, by the way that we feel about our body, by sense of self. All of those things are shaping it and changing it. But other people also hold stories and memories about us. And if we have people who are close to us, we give them the ability to shape our hide to a lesser or greater extent. And this is where, if you're doing healing or power retrieval work, this is where the northern tradition stuff starts to come through a little bit. It's okay, so I'm working with the hide on this. For somebody who gives their power to others a lot and is looking to restore it, that's where work can be done, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to bring this to you, because there is a lot of potential coming through from Sunday for the following 2 weeks to do work on, where are my edges? Do I need to renegotiate them? Do I need to bring power back in? So the story that hit it home for me, and I went, oh, of course, when somebody says that, was they said, everyone has a picture. So imagine in your mind right now somebody that you know well, a loved one that you see them fairly frequently, and imagine what they look like now. And you might imagine, if you've seen them today, you might imagine them, exactly as you have seen them today. But let's say you saw them a week ago, you might not remember what they were wearing that week, that week ago, but you'll have a picture, and that's their hide. And I was like, oh, really? I said that. And then I remembered a time when I was at university and I went to visit my parents, and I'd been there for a few days. And then a friend came over. She came to stay, and she'd met my family a couple of times before, but she obviously didn't know them as well as I did. And she came in and she looked at my dad and she went, "Oh, Roger, you've shaved your moustache off." And he said, "Yes, I have." He said, "You're the first person to notice." And all of us looked, like my mum looked at him, my brother, my sister looked at him, and we were all like, "So you have." None of us had noticed. And according to him, he'd shaved off 3 weeks previously. I don't know if it was quite that long, but certainly, that shows you the power of the hide. That, as his family, that's what we saw. We saw, him with his moustache. To this day, my mum still draws him. When she draws him with little round spectacles. I don't ever remember him wearing little round spectacles. He wore those, when they were first together. But other people hold images of us in their minds. And if you think about a time maybe when you didn't feel great about yourself, or perhaps you're in a workplace where you didn't feel confident, or you didn't feel as if you were expressed as the person that you were, we can buy into a almost like a false sense of who we are. Oh, you know, I'm boring, I don't have anything interesting to say, and it becomes like this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. And we don't actually know, you know, until we go in and we actually do the work, we don't know whether is that something that some other people are holding about us. Do they believe that? And sometimes that is the case. Sometimes it's a group think around you that creates this image that you then, you know, you give your power to. Sometimes you create it and then other people believe it as well. But, you know, working with the hide is really important in that sense. So that's the hide. So I want to share with you some thoughts on the hide and where it comes from. So I mentioned the Bacano rune. You know, Bacano rune, motherhood rune. You can see it in the shape. You know, the Bacano rune. People often say that it's like two breasts for the mother, or a silhouette with the breasts and the belly, the pregnant belly. But what's interesting is that for the pregnant belly, there's an aspect of transformation occurring there. And the rune poems actually speak much more about transformation. So they talk, for example, about Loki, and we've got this vision of sort of Loki hiding in amongst the leaves of the trees. And it reminds us that Loki is a shapeshifter, you know. And this is a really important part of thinking about, you know, what you can use the hide for. There's a shape-shifting aspect. You know, we have the power to change our views of ourselves and the views that other people have of us. We have the power to, you know, like take a piece of the hide and journey. You know, a piece of the hide can go off and do that journey. And Loki was a master shapeshifter. He could, you know, he borrowed Freya's falcon cloak at one point to be, you know, of service to the gods, to go, and he shifts into a falcon to go and form a rescue. He changes into a salmon, and when he's caught, he's actually in the shape of a fish, and he's caught by the gods, which we'll mention in a moment. But the motherhood aspect with the Bacano rune and Loki is interesting because it comes through because he performs an act of trickery. The gods have laid a bet. And as part of fulfilling the bet, making it work, he has to change into a horse. And he changes into a female horse. He changes into a mare. Hi, Laura. Nice to see you. Come a bit late, that's fine. We watch later, not a problem. And he, in that shape as the horse, in order to fulfill the trickery, he mates with another horse. And from that, he gives birth to Sleipnir, Odin's horse. Who then carries Odin between the worlds. So this idea of service comes through, of Loki being of service, even though he's a trickster. He's a useful trickster. And people often look at the Bacano rune and they go, oh, well, it's because, you know, of that mothering side, and that's why Loki's in there. But I think that the shape-shifting aspect is just as important as the, you know, fertility aspect. And, you know, when we think about womanhood or the divine feminine, the Bacano rune does invite us to think in a much more fluid way about identity. You know, if you were to think about like gender fluidity, for example, that would fall within the Bacano rune's provenance as well. And to me, while there is, you know, undoubtedly a deep connection with the divine feminine, part of the magics of the divine feminine are the ability to change, the ability to shift. You know, and the pregnant belly is just one example of that. You know, but Loki has this power. You know, so but this is why I want to be very clear that we're talking about feminine. We're not talking about male, female. You know, all of us have the ability to channel feminine power or masculine power. And the Bacano rune offers a form of feminine power, which is the ability to shape and shift. And Loki is obviously a master of that power, and he's able to use that power, and he uses it in service to the gods. And although he's known as, you know, he's a trickster and he's not trusted in that sense, maybe it's because he possesses that power. And I mentioned that he changed into a salmon at the in order to escape the gods. He'd just gone one step too far, and they're like, right, we're going to find him, we're going to get him. Is it a salmon or is it a fish? I think it's a salmon. It's definitely a fish. And they catch him, and when they catch him, they bind him, and they don't. And so they bind him. Which you think about binding, you know, almost like capturing the form. He becomes bound, and we'd have no more stories of him shifting. For whatever reason, he's not able to shift into something that would allow him to be released from the bindings. And they also place venom above his head, and people often think about the pain associated with the venom dripping upon him. But I also think about venom in terms of the scarring of the body, of, you know, that his form is now being dictated by the gods. So it's as if in some way the power that he has brought to them, this ability to shift, to transform, to use trickery, to be fluid in identity, to flow from male to female, from animal to he's actually a giant. He's a giant. All of these different powers. He has all of those powers, and the gods use him. But at some point, he becomes too dangerous. And the idea is, he becomes too dangerous because he's trying to thwart the gods in some way. But I sometimes wonder if it's that he becomes too dangerous because it's not a power that they can control. And this is what's really coming through for me in this sense. And it reminds me of, the narratives of feminine power, of fear associated with feminine power through the ages. If you think about of witchcraft, shape-shifting, of birthing itself, as one of the feminine powers, the ability to birth, the way in which the female bodies shape and they change through the cycle, change emotionally, change biologically, it's cascades of hormones and all of those things. We have, through humanity, we've had such a long history, and I can't go into all of it now, such a long history of feminine power being feared, not just by men, but by women as well. Again, I'm not sort of saying this is not about gender wars to me at all. This is about, I think, just recognizing that this battle of who controls your edges and who controls, who's in control, where are they and who is in control of them, is such an important one for all human beings, at this time. Are we giving our power away? Are we letting other people dictate what we should wear, what we should sound like, what we should do, who we should try and be? That's where I really wanted to go with this. Are we, with our emotions, are we allowing ourselves to express our emotions, or are we actually pushing them down? Are we controlling our own energy edges because we're afraid that other people might not like it? Or maybe we're afraid of our emotions ourselves. There's a lot in here. So I really wanted to bring that to presence now, because that's something that I have found already has been hugely available to me. I just woke up feeling I really need to do some of this work today. I really need to look into this and go, okay, where is my power? Where have I given that to somebody else? Where do I need to do some reclamation work? Now, am I standing as exuberantly and as fully as I possibly can in my sense of who I am, how I want to express myself in the world? And am I doing the same for others? Am I giving them the space? Am I opening up to allow them to do that too? So that we are not in a position of fearing each other and fearing each other's power. So that's probably, I think, where I shall leave it for you in this sense, is to say, that's what's coming at this point, is this Bacano energy. So I'd really encourage you to start working on that. And I'm just going to have a little look and check. So Suzanne has said, can you do timeline healing for your hide? Absolutely. You can absolutely do timeline healing for your hide. What I tend to find is when I do this type of work is I might sort of say, okay, I was triggered. I was triggered yesterday. Someone said something and I had a reaction that was far outweighed what, why is it bothering me so much? And then I find the thread and I go, okay, what does this remind me of? What's this taking me back to? And often it takes me back through my timeline to pieces of power that I've slowly given away over time. Senses of, who I am, what I can be, judgments that I've made about myself, believing that others made those, truths that I've taken on about, who people think I am. And for whatever reason, I've allowed that to be the case. To follow that timeline back through and to reclaim that. And the Bacano rune is a really, really powerful place to do that. And I think part of that is because it gives us access both to the ability to shift our form, and because it does have within it that divine feminine that accepts, the mother energy that does, accepts us unconditionally. Whatever form, whatever you look like, warts and all, I will draw you in. Sally Ann, you said, could you suggest any practices that relate as a practice for this week that relate? I think I understand what you mean. I think you're looking for some examples. Well, I've actually come to the end of my time for this reading, and I knew I was going to that was going to happen for this reading. But what I'm looking to do is to say, okay, what can I do within the blog, and what can I do within the hearth space to sort of support people in using this energy, because it's come through very strongly there. Suzanne says, I feel a hide spread coming through. Quite possibly, Suzanne, we might have a hide spread in the hearth space at some point. So I hope that you have found this useful and helpful. Happy International Women's Day to one and all, and wishing you a week that is filled with that sense of growth and potential, and enlightenment of the sun, coming through, and that, all of the shape-shifting, power reclamation, divine feminine energies that are there for you. Enjoy.